What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Live Wire Sports Channel podcast. I'm your host, Jay Barlow.
Todd Jones, what's up, everybody? Been a while, man. I've been waiting to get on here, man. I'm glad to get on here.
Glad you could join me, man. Thanks for calling in.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What we're going to do on this first one, we talk a lot about ball and everything. So I want to get into is, the season ended kind of really on a bad note with everything going on. And there was a lot that we missed out on. We don't know about playoff seeding. There were a lot of teams fighting for the 8th seed in the West, and teams were losing steam. Other teams were picking up steam. What I want to get into is the MVP race aspect of it, though. If you had to pick who your MVP was for this year with what we saw, who would you pick for the MVP this year?
Well, obviously it's going to come down to two people. It's either LeBron James or Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek freak from the Milwaukee Bucks. I would have to give the nod to Giannis at this point because he is the only true superstar on the team. I like Chris Middleton, but he's not to the level where LeBron James has with Anthony Davis, etc. But I will give credit where credit's due because when they did meet up not too long ago, LeBron James did get the better of Giannis. He played better than him.
Okay.
So there was still a neck-and-neck race, but unfortunately, like you said, with everything that's going on, we really don't know what would have happened next. But at this moment, my MVP would have to be Giannis because he's been doing this all year.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying. For me, I disagree with that. That seems to be the consensus for everybody is that it would be between Giannis and LeBron. I'm looking at, for the entirety of the year, what guys have to work with. My MVP in terms of the top four, I would go in order of, it would have been Luka, Giannis, LeBron, then Harden. Special consideration to Jimmy Butler. I had Luka ahead of Giannis because he's much younger, less experienced. In the sense of the NBA, he's already played professionally. But in terms of the NBA,
he's about that.
This is only his second year. He's not as athletic, not as physically gifted. He's dominating. I would say Giannis's team is definitely better. LeBron's team is clearly better. He has one of probably the most talented team this year.
I think I could say from like a better standpoint is that the Lakers are the best team in terms of like star power. The Bucks are the best team in terms of like system and play type. That's how I see it.
I would actually say that would, in terms of system and play type, I would go for the Miami Heat before I would go for the Bucks. The Bucks are the better team, but I like in terms of the system and how they all feed off of each other. And that's why I think Jimmy Butler, I think that system doesn't really work that well. The same way the Bucks system wouldn't work with if they didn't have Giannis. The Heat system wouldn't work if they didn't have Jimmy Butler in it. So that's another guy I think that should have, been considered in the MVP race too. I mean, nobody expected them to be as dominant as they were for as long as they were. They were like, 21-3 at home for the longest. Nobody could beat them at home. And even when they slowed down, they were still killing on the road. So,
yeah, don't get me wrong. I love the Miami Heat. The Heat they had a nice group. Their oldest guy, I think, at that point before they picked up Iguodala was like Udonis Haslem and Dragic. Like everybody was under like 29 years old, and your star, which was Jimmy Butler, who was 29 years old. You still had Bam, who was coming up. Kendrick Nunn, Derrick Jones, Duncan Robinson. They had a lot of good young players in places where they can compete. The problem is that they're still young, they're inexperienced, and they have the right play type. They just are not experienced enough to where it could be at its absolute best. That's why I kind of give it to the Bucks having the best system because they actually, I think, was the number one defense in the league up to this point. Compared to like everybody else.
Yeah, I think they still held that title for best defensive team in the league. They were just ridiculous on both sides of the ball, really. I mean, but then that makes me wonder because that team is, if you look at their roster, that team is stacked. Do you think that your team can really like affect how an MVP is perceived, because James Harden hands down should have been in the MVP race, and I don't feel like he ever really got consideration this year. It was just like, oh, he's killing, he's getting his numbers, but I don't feel like he got the respect he deserved this year either.
Now, I think for a team, obviously your team builds around your star. The Bucks did a really good job of building what they need around Giannis. They need a lot of shooters because Giannis is is able to drive.
Mm-hmm.
He's not the greatest 3-point shooter, but he is a two-way slashing playmaker. He's just 6'11". He's just Kevin Durant's size, which is crazy by all means. Harden's standpoint, the reason why I think he's probably not getting the recognition for what he's doing is because of the system and like how crazy it is, where he is their first to 15th option is James Harden. It's like he's going to get his numbers. His numbers are being ballooned because of the system. And that's why you see when it comes to the playoffs, he always, getting burnt out because he has to carry them for all 82 games. Even when they had, Chris Paul and they had like Lou Williams, Westbrook, it's always been on James Harden's shoulders because the system that Mike D'Antoni is running best fits the a one ball handler who is their best scorer.
Yeah.
So like what I actually noticed this year was that Westbrook was actually starting to get into the groove of things. He was actually starting to attack more. His numbers were starting to go up. He wasn't shooting well from the 3-point shot, but his field goal was doing better because he was able to attack the basket.
Right.
But what I noticed was that James Harden was in a slump. He wasn't doing that well.
This game definitely suffered.
Like somebody's game is getting hurt. So what I know is that in that system, it only fits one star. If you have two stars, one of them is going to drop. It's going to falter from it. And that's why he doesn't get the recognition that he deserves.
Right.
Because don't get me wrong, for him to be able to put up that amount of points every night, night after night after night, that's impressive in of itself.
Yeah.
But it is not the best way. That doesn't make them like the best team because they're not really doing team ball. That's true ISO ball.
So this is one of those situations where the system punishes the player. It has really nothing to do with his performance. It's just because, but I feel like that should work against Giannis as well, and it just doesn't. Because that system, if Giannis is injured for whatever reason or just doesn't play, that team is not at all going to perform the same way. It's just not.
They don't perform the same way, but it's not like it's just a major drop-off. It's not like because they still actually have good pieces around the way it could do okay. If Harden is not performing well and then nobody else is, they're getting popped.
But see, that's the thing about that team. Okay, so we know that they're super perimeter oriented, right? We know when they get hot, they can shoot crazy and all this other type stuff. You would think with them saying, oh, we're going to outscore somebody, we're going to try to get up 130 points a game. If you because they have, every year, they've always had the defensive pieces. Why that coach why D'Antoni won't buy into playing defense? Instead of getting a 130, you could get 145. You have a P.J. Tucker, an Amon Shumpert. They had
P.J. Tucker, Amon
Patrick
Shumpert,
Beverly.
they had Trevor Ariza at a time.
Yeah. And then
they had great perimeter defensive players, 3-and-D guys.
Yeah, and you gave those guys up and got nothing in return. And it's crazy if you look at the depth that they had. They had the Clippers roster. They literally had Patrick Beverly, Lou Will, and Montrezl Harrell with Sam Decker. They gave up several picks, and that's how the Clippers got that deep. When they had, Avery Bradley and all those guys. That was literally Houston's team. They gave up all these pieces to get a point guard, but now you have all those pieces gone, so who the point guard going to pass to? The deal made no sense. You overpaid an older guy, and I like Chris Paul, and he was killing this year. He was, he was very dominant. I don't think anybody expected OKC to be what they were. I definitely didn't see them.
I didn't.
I mean, they were performing, and I don't know. To me, it was.
But you see what you just said. Chris Paul had like a resurgent year, and you didn't expect OKC to be this good. That's because the system that he was in took away away from his play style because you got to think about it. Chris Paul is a all-around point guard. He's a guy who likes to distribute, likes to score, likes to defend. He goes on a team and is like, look, all we want you to do is go stand on the wing or stand on the corner and get ready for the catch and shoot.
Right.
If you're not doing that, then you're the ball handler. You don't look for no pick and roll plays and none of that. You look to go get a bucket every time. And that's not necessarily how he plays. He likes to make sure that everybody is involved. That's not how D'Antoni plays. D'Antoni likes scoring guards. Chris Paul is a two-way, all-around point guard. That's why he kind of like wavered a little bit. It didn't work because that system didn't work for him.
I think with
so
the Chris Paul,
OKC and it changes.
But with Chris Paul right now, and a lot of people don't give that team credit. And this is the one time I could say that GM, and we won't get into that GM later because we always had that conversation about Harden with OKC. We're going to get into that real soon. But a lot of people don't give him credit in this regard. You gave up. You literally just gave them up. I mean, when you look at what they got back in terms of name-wise, right? But you got back Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That's going to be, I think he's going to be a really good young player. He does have all-star potential. Big guard. You got Danilo Gallinari. Like, they actually have a good-looking team, and they have movable assets. And I know they got some decent draft picks out of it, too. So,
decent. They got like a motherload of draft picks.
But I don't remember what. I think they were second-round picks, though. The Clippers low-key hustled them a little bit.
And a couple first. I think it was like a
late first.
Number. I think it was like
they didn't get no good first-round pick. It was like a late, first-round pick is what they were guaranteed. So, we kind of strayed away from the MVP race, but yeah, for me, I think getting back on track with that, I originally would have had Luka, but as the season progressed, because he did get injured, Giannis.
That's what hurt him.
Giannis became my MVP.
Nice year.
But if he did not get hurt, Luka would have been my MVP.
Okay, I got no issue with that at all. I mean, like he was having a hell of a year.
Because I'm also looking at he was in the West doing this. Porzingis was not like himself. I mean, you look at their team, like, they got some decent names. It's a very young team. You know the scouting report. You know what he's coming to do, and he's killing you. And that's one of those other things where it's like, okay, this guy's this young, he's dominating. What if Trae Young had that opportunity or had that kind of team or coach? Because Rick Carlisle is underrated as a coach too. And those young names that I mean, Seth Curry's a good young piece. Tim Hardaway Jr. is a good young piece. So it's not like he's not playing with anybody, but for him to do what he's doing in the West, I think he deserved a lot more credit than what he got towards the end of the year before everything ended.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And Rick Carlisle is an underrated coach. A lot of people forget that he won a championship with the Dallas Mavericks when they went against LeBron James, D-Wade, and the Heat. Yeah. And he was also got the Pistons to the conference finals before they won the championship that very next year. Yeah. So I could definitely agree when you say Luka would be an MVP. Plus, he also has Kristaps Porzingis, who's not 100% himself at that point. He was still recovering from his injury and whatnot. He was still doing this in the loaded Western Conference. Which, like you said, Steph Curry, Tim Hardaway. They also had Jalen Brunson, who was also a nice young
very underrated piece as well.
Yeah, underrated as heck. They was a young squad, and they was not really doing this, and they were. So I can see that. I can see Luka being part of the MVP race if he didn't get hurt, if not actually winning it.
So, okay.
He actually could have been the youngest, I think. He would have been the youngest.
Yeah, because what is he, 21?
I think 22? He probably just turned 21, I think.
Yeah, he's still ridiculous. Oh, that's the crazy part about all these the guys we're talking about the MVP race. Giannis ain't 25 yet, I don't think. I don't think he's 25. Luka's clearly not there.
He's 24. He is 24.
So he's not 25. You're not even close to your prime yet. Your prime kicks in when you're 28 years old. So that's the scary part about that. And then you got other players who are developing still, like Siakam. I'm not saying he'll be an MVP, but the way he's going to continue to progress. And then you got Zion, who's going to naturally get bigger and stronger. You know what I mean? Like,
Now we don't need Zion to get any bigger than he already is.
Well, yeah. I'm definitely not talking about adding weight.
He's already a problem, and he ain't able to. He ain't even 20 yet.
Yeah, but I mean, when you think about that, I mean, naturally, as she's gonna get older, should he stay healthy, that athleticism is just gonna be. He's gonna be a real scary prospect to look at. Coming going into the
He's
future.
already a scary prospect. He's probably a grown man right now. He is a grown man.
And that's another one where I honestly, if he had been healthy too, he probably would have been up there in that MVP race because the moment he came back, that team played a whole lot different.
Yeah,
Like they became way more competitive.
Now I would say his injury or him the rest of was a bless and a curse at the same time.
Yeah.
I'll say it's a curse because obviously you wanted to be out there, you wanted to play.
Right.
But it was a blessing because we was able to get a good dose of what Brandon Ingram could really be.
And not just him. Well, he was killing. He had like a stretch where he averaged like 40 and 10, but Josh Hart, Lonzo, Redick got his flow back. Everybody got really productive in that time he was out.
And plus, was able to look at the young child that they had, that center, Jackson Hayes.
Yeah.
He's nice.
He's really nice.
I really like his game. I like his game.
Now,
Very athletic, can run the floor, and can rim protect. I appreciate that. That's a nice thing to have from a 19-year-old.
Do you think that because all those guys are performing, do you think that makes them of value in a trade? I don't know who they would look for to get right now. I would try to work things out and see how far the team can get with a healthy Zion on the court. Do you think that they would try to make a move in the postseason? Well, it's not a postseason. Season just done, but
off season.
Yeah.
Honestly, no. If I was like in there, I think they would be the same way. Is that I would like to see them develop because we didn't get a full dosage of what this group could really do.
No,
and
definitely
plus,
not.
like you said, they're really, really young. Like your veteran is JJ Redick, who is a marksman.
Right.
That's your veteran.
He gonna play forever.
A high IQ marksman.
Yep.
Okay, and you still have Drew Holiday. I think actually that might be the only guy that I can see them trying to move is him.
Really?
I would think that they'll try to keep that young core together and see if they can grow. Because I've seen Lonzo Ball actually made some great strides in terms of his jump shot. He's not using that slingshot no more. He's actually shooting like normally. And we know he's a solid defender and a solid playmaker.
Yeah.
So I think that this is the perfect group for him. And him being with Zion is the perfect matchup because he likes to throw lobs. And Zion likes to go up and get them. So I think that would be perfect for them. So I think they should keep that group together and see where that team could go. Because like I said, Zion is 18. Jackson Hayes is 19. Ingram's 21. Lonzo's 21.
That team's going to be scary.
These are really young dudes, man.
And another thing,
Josh Hart is the oldest one. He's 24.
Another thing, I mean, when you look at a lot of young teams, like Miami looks really good. They look well coached. They look like they're ready. That team, in a way, when Zion came back, looked like they were ready for a playoff matchup, Like they had that confidence.
That's scary.
Yeah. Now, with them being in the playoffs, obviously, if they were to make it, as of today, they'd have been playing against the Lakers. I want to get into, we're not going to discuss the playoff seeding right now. I want to get into how you think these playoffs would have worked out because a lot of people were starting to, they thought the Lakers were gonna. I don't think the Lakers were gonna get as far as expected. I don't think they would have made it to the finals.
Well, I had to me in the conference finals. I did have Lakers and Clippers, but I did have the Clippers coming out of the West. I had the Clippers come out of the West.
I have Lakers and Clippers next year with DeMarcus Cousins coming back. When he comes back with AD and LeBron, that is going to be a problem with JaVale and Dwight and those guys coming off the bench. Of course, if the coach plays the right matchups and the right lineups, which was a continuous problem, especially when they played the Clippers throughout the year. This year, I actually could see the Rockets beating the Lakers. because AD's health, and we've talked about this before, his health is just, for a guy that young, he's just so up and down. Just like Joel Embiid, you just don't know what you're gonna get night in, night out. I mean, you literally might blow his nose and get an injury. It's ridiculous. You really don't know what to expect with him.
Okay. Well, I could see how 80's body holding up can dictate whether the Lakers do well in the playoffs or not. But I didn't see the Rockets. I don't see the Rockets beating the Lakers mainly because one of your two stars could potentially burn out. Okay, James Harden had to put up historic numbers just to make sure that they could win games.
Right.
If James Harden's not doing well, they could potentially be in trouble. Now, you say, I know he's going to say, what about Westbrook? Westbrook likes to slash the basket. That's cool.
I actually had a different thing in mind.
Really?
So
Yeah.
you're saying he had to put up those historic numbers. Now, what were they? A third seed when the season finished? I think they were a third seed.
I have to look it up to see. I'm not necessarily sure.
Okay, they were definitely. I know for a fact that they were definitely top four, right? So Harden was averaging before Westbrook went on his tour. He was averaging like 38, 39. It dropped to 33, which is insane. It dropped to 33.
Yes, it drops.
Now, when Steph had his unanimous year, where he would put up like 40 points and not even have to play in the fourth quarter, do you remember that they had that, what was it, 73-9 season? How many games behind was San Antonio? So they had to do all that extra work. Like, people don't talk about that.
They was about
San Antonio, yeah. So it wasn't like people were like, oh, they were chasing the record. Well, they didn't really have a choice. They were literally at risk, and especially in the West. It don't take but a couple games, and then you could drop from a first seed to a sixth seed, literally. Like, it's insane how that works. So I think in that situation, it's the same thing as when the Golden State Warriors. It's just not having the same success rate again because of the system.
Now, now you actually pointed me in the right direction. It's the system. Now, with the Warriors, everybody is so, in love with the three-point shot. They love seeing Steph Curry, Klay Thompson.
I know where you're going with this.
At the time, they had, like, KD and whatnot, like the three-point shot.
Right.
In the NBA, they have multiple weapons. You got the three-point shot. You got the mid-range shot. You got post-up, layups, dunks, free throws. That's like 6 things I just said right there.
Right.
Okay? The Houston Rockets is probably using 50% of what I just said.
No, they're not even using 50%. They're literally just threes and dunks. That's it. And the only one getting to the free throw line is Harden.
Exactly. So they're not using all of their weapons.
Yeah.
The Golden State Warriors back then, when they went 73-9, they was using all their weapons. They was scoring three-point shots, but it was also cutting to the basket, getting mid-range, getting to the line, using pick and roll. It's easy with the Rockets. It's three-point shot. James Harden, go ahead, go boogie-oogie on somebody and get fouled, get to the free throw line. That's it. Westbrook is kind of like the guy that's just floating around. That's the other star. And if James Harden gets tired, then Westbrook replaces James Harden for that moment, and then he does what he has to do until James Harden comes back in. That's their system.
Okay,
and
so
that's not going to work.
I get what you're saying, and you're sticking with the system thing. I'm not saying that the Rockets would have beat them because of the system, but a lot of people don't understand how banged up the Lakers were. It's not just that AD is always a question mark with his health. Boogie was hurt. Dwight was hurt. JaVale had an injury. Rondo had an injury. Danny Green did not play quite a few games. Kyle Kuzma missed most of the season. So everybody's like, oh, they're going to make it. They're going to make it. How you going to make it if you weren't healthy?
So are you saying that the Lakers probably would have lost that series because not only injuries, but they didn't have the chemistry down to where they know how to play with one another?
I'm saying that even if they did make it to the conference finals, worst case scenario, LeBron does what LeBron does, right? You get to the conference finals and you get to the Clippers. Now you're getting guarded by Patrick Beverly, Paul George, Kawhi. You can't play the way he did in the East and the West. That's not going to work. So that's why I'm saying.
That's why I had the Clippers coming out.
That's why I don't have them getting to the conference finals, really. Because he's already, like, at the end of the year, you saw him already having to overexert himself. So Now I don't think anybody in those lower seeds would have been a threat to them. But the whole point
Well, you
is,
never know. You never know.
yeah,
It's the
that's
Western
true. Well,
Conference.
not a threat, not a threat in the sense that someone was going to beat them 4 games out of the 7. That wasn't going to happen. But not with them healthy,
Okay.
I should say.
Right.
But
Right. Right.
I just could see him being in a situation where he would have to overexert himself again this year coming up, and it's gonna be different. There were teams in the playoffs they're not gonna be in there, and there was teams that weren't in the playoffs that didn't make any, like Portland to me, and for Dame to have been killing it. Now again, he had injuries, and Melo came in and played great. And I think that GM needs some questioning too, because those pieces that played so great for them last year, Mo Harkless, Seth Curry, all those guys, for them to not be on the team this year.
Let's take a pause right here. I got to ask you a question because we did forget about Damian Lillard. Would you have Damian Lillard in this year's MVP race?
He absolutely deserved to be. That's the thing. Dame actually deserves to be in the conversation pretty much every year because he's never missed the playoffs in the Western Conference. And you look at what he's
That's
had.
very true.
Even when he had LaMarcus and those guys, he carried all of those teams, even as a rookie.
Because he was playing a lot different than he did like in the past years. Like past years he was playing was great, but this year it seemed like he took it to another level that we haven't really seen.
This year he snapped.
I've seen where I think he had an interview and somebody asked him, "Is this the best that you played in your career?" He said, "Yeah," and I believe him.
I think it's by necessity because, again, they're lacking the depth that they had last year. Last year was their chance, but they just came against. I mean, he said in an interview himself, I mean, nobody puts a run together like those Warriors teams did. But I think last year was their chance. They had the perfect amount of depth. Again, they were injured.
Yeah.
They were missing Nurkic, and they missed like 2 bigs. I forget who the other one was, but they had some pieces missing. Not that it would have really made a difference with KD and but
It wasn't a big. It was Nurkic and Rodney Hood went down.
But it was another big though. They had another rim protector. I can't remember his name right now. 6'10". You could. He had a couple big games against them, but he ended up missing like the last 2 in the sweep. But
Miles Leonard.
he did get hurt. Yeah, it was Myers. That's what it was.
Yeah. I didn't think it was. Okay. I thought. Yeah.
He played most of this year, but he did get from what I remember, he wasn't 100%. I mean, nobody is at that point in the year, but he did have a little. I think it was like a back spasm or something like that.
Okay.
But Dame, he deserves to be recognized in the MVP conversation every year. I also think that him being in Portland doesn't help his case either because they aren't shown on TV. And so I think he kind of flies under the rug when he really should. I mean, you talk about point guards. I don't know if there's 4 in the league that's better than him. I told you I personally would take a Damian Lillard before I would take a Kyrie. Not because of talent. Kyrie is probably top 5 in the league talent-wise. But in terms of fit, you could throw Dame in that Golden State system, he would kill. You could throw him in that Houston Rockets system, he would kill. You could throw him in really any system and he would be just fine. He's going to get, 25 and 8. But, yeah, Dame deserves a lot more credit than he's been getting. And in terms of his team, I think they would have made the playoffs, but they would have got bumped early. It would have still led to, I think, the Clippers getting a ring this year.
Yeah.
Which leads me to the next part of this conversation. Rings. I want to talk about rings, but I want to talk about the teams that did not get them. I want to talk about the all-time teams to never get a ring. Who are your favorite all-time teams that never won a championship? To me, the greatest team that never won one, that OKC team with Harden, KD, Russ, Serge, all those young guys. I mean, that team was so... You had 3 MVPs on the team,
So check this out, okay? You're a manager over in Oklahoma City. And you draft not 1, not 2, but a rim protector, athletic Serge Ibaka.
Right.
A guy who just athletically just don't know what to do, but he just know how to block shots.
Right.
Like at his best, he was averaging like roughly 3 to 4 blocks a game.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go ahead and they all disappear and you still don't have a ring. Number one, why did they all disappear? Because you gave up James Harden
over $3 million.
$3 million.
Not a year, total.
Total.
Kendrick Perkins contract.
Yeah. That's crazy. And here's the thing. That might be they might have the most underrated era as a team. Because after that, they kept getting quality players.
Yeah.
Reggie Jackson, Steven Adams, Kevin Martin. They was getting so many good players. They was getting the right quality veterans.
They had the Golden State team.
Butler,
exactly. They had championship experience, defense, everything you could want in a championship team. They had it, and they literally gave it away.
Like, we look at Golden State and say, yo, that squad is unfair. We avoided OKC. OKC had a squad that was probably better than that.
They did have a squad. They were up.
MVP.
That's the thing. That same team, I mean, yeah, like you said, they kept getting quality players to replace these different guys. So even when they lost Jeremy Lamb, they picked up Andre Robertson, who was a good defensive player for them. So they kept finding players to replace all the pieces that they had. And they were always performing. They had them 3-1. They had Golden State 3-1. Now, of course, Clay did Clay Thompson type stuff, so things just didn't work out in their favor, and Steph kind of. But for you guys to get to one finals, and again, they were competitive every year, but I don't know if it was just because Pop had their numbers or whatever, but every time they played the Spurs, for whatever reason, that older team, they started playing to another team's pace. And part of that is I never really liked their coaches. I liked Scott Brooks for the most part when he was there. But those last few years, I was like, all right, now he's just trash. And I don't like Billy Donovan, to be honest with you, either. I don't feel like he's doing much of the coaching on that team.
Yeah.
To me, he's not getting the most out of the talent on that team, for sure.
Like, it's still just is mind-boggling that they had 3 future MVPs that they drafted. Both KD and Russ won their MVP there.
Mm-hmm.
James Harden, he didn't win one, but he won 6th Man of the Year.
They were literally comparing him to a Hall of Famer. They were literally saying he's the next Ginobili. He's coming off the bench and you're comparing him to a Hall of Famer. Who's got, 3 rings at that time? Crazy.
Yeah, that's about right. Like, it's crazy that they was able to have that type of luck to draft 3 MVPs, and then that group, they just all left.
Not even just that. Even Serge bounced. They drafted all, like, the depth that they had. They drafted Reggie Jackson too, right? When you look at all the guys they drafted and the guys they were just able to acquire, Darren Collins and Nick, Derek Fisher. Their teams were they had the most talented, deep team. I mean, 12 deep every year.
Now, there's also another team that should have won, not only probably at the very least get to the NBA Finals, but didn't.
Who's that?
And it is the Clippers of Lob City.
Oh my gosh, that team.
The amount of depth that squad had. Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan. Right there is nothing but lobs all over the place, as we saw.
Yeah.
But then when you have guys like, you had a J.J. Redick, Jamal Crawford, Eric Bledsoe, Matt Barnes. They had Danny Granger at the time. Had Big Baby Glenn Davis, Hedo Turkoglu, Karan Butler, Grant Hill. This is just the players that they had in the past.
They actually had
the whole time.
When you look at like that Clippers, not even just then. You look at the last 3 6 men of the year. with Jamal Crawford, Eric Gordon, Lil Will. They had all three of them.
Yeah.
Two of them typically at the same time. So it's just like that depth. Again, you had rim protection. You had, I mean, But from what I was able to pick up from that was that they were the ones beating themselves for the most part every single year. Like they were dysfunctional from the inside, and part of it was, I remember they had the coach. They had Doc wearing like four different titles. Like he wasn't just the coach; he was like the president and something else. And I'm like, so they're overworking him. It was just stuff that didn't make sense. And of course, you had that foolishness with the owner and all that type of stuff. And they got a whole different makeover. But it was just like you said, that team, the talent, they had all the right pieces, the glue guy, like Matt Barnes, all those. But they're like just like OKC couldn't get past the Spurs for whatever reason. Whenever they would play the Grizzlies, they just Zebo and them dudes would just get hold of them.
And the thing was that it was for some reason it was that second round for them. They always ran to the team that took them out. It wasn't just necessarily the Grizzlies. It was the Grizzlies sometimes. Yeah. Then another time it was the Spurs, and then another time it was the Rockets. Because they actually had the Rockets up.
They were 3-1.
3-1.
Yeah.
In Game 5, and it was at the Clippers. That was at home, and they had the game wrapped up. But somehow, and I still don't understand this, that the Rockets, they set out Dwight Howard and James Harden. And Josh Smith and Corey Brewer led that comeback.
Yeah.
Out of all people, led them to not only come back, but to win the game and turn the tide completely.
Well, Josh Smith came off that MVP overseas, so he was feeling himself for real coming over there. He was like, I'm finna turn up on y'all.
I'm the best player in the world. Y'all don't know about me.
Yeah, I mean, but that Rockets team, to me, they were better then, way better then than they are now. And that was with Harden doing. That's the thing. When Harden got that where he got skipped on the one he should have gotten his second MVP, because the one in 2015, people say he should have got that over Steph. That one could have went either way. That was one of those situations where the best player on the best team got rewarded. I could see Harden deserving that one. But the one where Russ put up his first triple-double, I thought that should have been a co-MVP type situation. I thought that team where they had Pat Bev, Lou Will, Eric Gordon, Sam Decker, Ryan Anderson, all those guys, that was the best Houston team. And they still had Trevor Ariza. They had the perfect combination of depth, defense. I mean, I don't know. That's just my opinion. What do you think about that? And I think they keep getting pieces. I think they're just throwing away opportunities. Because they had Kenneth Faried last year and didn't use him right.
The team they had before, like before they met Mike D'Antoni, was a great team. Team got to the Western Conference Finals against the Golden State Warriors. They lost because, for one, I think Dwight Howard was hurt that series.
Steph was bully balling him. We're not giving him that. I remember him getting pounded on the boards.
They kept saying that the Warriors kept facing the teams where main piece of their squad was hurt. So it's either Harden was hurt or Dwight Howard was hurt, because that was who their two main guys were.
See, okay, so I'm glad you said that. And we're going to talk about it a little bit further on another episode, but that foolishness about, they didn't face anybody. When they played the Pelicans, AD was completely fine to play. When they played the Grizzlies, people forget, the Grizzlies got up on them 2-1 in that series, and Mike Conley was back with a broken face. They beat them. You remember he broke his, I don't know how he did it, but
I was like, yo, I was really thinking, how this man on the court when his face is broken?
But was balling though. But was balling. So they beat those teams straight up, but people don't talk about when Klay Thompson got undercut and he was bleeding from his ear. People don't remember that part when Klay got injured. So it's interesting how people, again, it's revisionist history, but people pick and choose, their battles on that. But, and I think that leads into the last aspect of this conversation, which is all-time great teams. And again, I think finishing up that last part of, the best teams to never win a championship, that Golden State team that went 73-9, if they were healthy,
True.
And a lot of people don't talk about how banged up that team was. You had Steph coming out of a first finals against OKC. They were down 3-1,
Compromise.
beat
Yeah.
2 MVPs. This is after they played Portland, and Steph got to play, 2 games, and he had the one great game where he had like 17 in overtime. But he was banged up his whole way through because he sprained his knee against Patrick Beverley in the first round. Because that's just what Patrick Beverley does to these point guards out here. Russ know all about that too. And I love Pat Bev until he plays my team. But yeah, no, Steph was banged up. Iguodala had the back spasms. Azili was a walking injury. Bogut was a walking injury. People don't talk about how banged up that team was. And again, Clay, who had to overexert himself on both ends of the floor, he was banged up too. So just like they talk about, if Kyrie had played that first one, they probably would have won. They probably would have, but I don't think it would have. I think it would have just swapped. I think Cleveland could have possibly won that first one, but Golden State would have for sure won that second one had they been healthy.
I can see that. I can see that. Now, I think there is another team that was, to me, that's underrated that I believe who could have won if they didn't run into the Shaq and Kobe Lakers, and that is the Sacramento Kings.
Yeah.
They had Chris Webber, Peja Stojakovic,
Doug
Lottie
Christie.
Levi, Mike Bibby, and the crew.
Mm-hmm.
That team was really, really nice. They was coming to the zone. Chris Webber was basically in his prime. Peja Stojakovic was only 25 years old at the time, was a marksman.
Yeah.
Mike Bibby was just that point guard, like that true scoring point guard that you wanted. They had everything that they needed to win a championship, but they didn't because they ran into the Lakers. They ran into the Lakers, the Shaq and Kobe Lakers. And they would have beaten them if there was some controversial call. I think that happened like in one of their games that basically turned the tide for them. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, I think to me that's one of the better teams that should have won a championship but didn't.
Another Shaq team that I would throw in there is that Orlando team. Him with Penny, Nick Anderson, 3D. They had a squad. They messed that one up.
They did. They did mess it up by letting Shaq walk. It wasn't the same since. Well, from that standpoint, they wasn't the same. Letting Shaq walk was probably the biggest mistake that they ever made.
Yeah, you literally. He had already been marked in the top 50, but
he was 3 years in the league. You're gonna be there. You're gonna be there. They just going off for foreseeing the future.
And they got it right.
He's gonna be in top 50.
They for sure got it right.
No, they got it right.
But
we're not arguing.
But even with those teams we just named, I do think that they make the all-time greats in terms of team-wise. I think that those they could run with the best of them. Really, they got the talent. The coaching could have been a little bit better at times. The OKC thing, it was just too premature for them to have broken that up. They really messed that up. I don't know if that'll probably ever happen again. 3 MVPs on one team. Again, nobody knew that was gonna happen, but my God.
You don't draft 3 future MVPs.
And I'll throw.
You just let them go.
And I'll throw another one in there that people always sleep on. Derrick Rose, Kyle Korver, Rip Hamilton, Joakim Noah, Luol Deng. That team in Chicago should have got one. If Derrick Rose, of course, didn't get hurt. That's the only thing.
Derrick Rose got hurt.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. That's it, man. If Derrick Rose would have never had to deal with the injuries that he had to deal with, what would the NBA be like right now?
Ooh. Well, we're going to have to talk about that more on the next episode, man. We're going to have to do that. But, I think we covered a lot of ground on this one. I think we got a lot that we have to talk about too soon coming up. But thanks for joining me on the first episode, bro. I really appreciate you calling in. I really appreciate taking the time with you to go over these different topics. So thank you so much.
No problem, man. I've definitely enjoyed talking to you, man. I want to be back on here soon, man. Get me on here, man.
Oh, well, you pretty much, that's a done deal. You're pretty much a regular, anyways. We talk all the time, so I'm definitely looking forward to dropping more episodes with you. More is definitely coming out. I will be dropping weekly, so please turn on your notifications, like, subscribe, share. You won't know that I've posted unless you subscribe, so please do that. Love you guys. This is episode 1 of the Live Wire Sports Channel podcast. More coming soon. Peace.